Welcome to the channel, where today we unlock the chilling enigma behind a coin so seemingly ordinary that it vanishes into millions of hands each day without a second glance. Yet so drenched in mystery, so surrounded by inexplicable irregularities, haunting defects, and mythic anomalies, that its very existence demands the question that echoes through every corner of the numismatic world. What if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? Not by intent, not by artistry, but by the slow and silent intrusion of chaos into the most precise institution in American manufacturing, the U.S. Mint. And what if this chaos was not accidental, but a veil cast over something deeper, something older, something never meant to be found? The coin in question is the 1996 D Lincoln penny, a coin that on the surface appears no different than its billions of siblings. Bearing the classic profile of Abraham Lincoln on its copper-plated zinc surface, the time-honored inscriptions of liberty and unity, and the bold D mint mark that anchors it to the Denver Mint. But beneath this familiarity lurks a series of disturbing irregularities that have stirred the minds of collectors and researchers for decades, strange variations that defy standard minting logic and lead the obsessed to believe that somewhere within the year 1996, an unseen force breached protocol, tampered with history, and left behind a numismatic relic of unsettling peculiarity. It began quietly, with a few stray reports of doubling on Lincoln's ear, then his jawline, then the entire date. A doubling too irregular to be dismissed as machine doubling, with split serifs and raised outlines indicating true die doubling, yet strangely inconsistent with any officially documented die pairings from 1996. And as these reports gathered steam, other oddities began to surface. Coins where the D mint mark appeared strangely crooked or malformed, off-centered in ways that no master die should have allowed, and then even more troubling, coins where the mint mark appeared to be missing entirely, or faintly visible only under magnification, suggesting either over-polishing of the dies, or perhaps even the mistaken use of a Philadelphia obverse die in the Denver facility, an error that, if verified, would point to a breach in minting discipline so severe that it shakes the foundation of the mint's operating integrity. And yet it does not end there, because further anomalies emerged, specimens with strange planchette characteristics, coins that weighed slightly more or less than the post-1982 copper-plated zinc standard, coins that bore discoloration patterns suggesting improper alloy bonding or contamination from foreign materials, and in more extreme cases, pennies with blisters, bubbles, and cratered surfaces as though they were struck on experimental planchettes never intended for circulation. And suddenly collectors began to whisper, could it be that in 1996, amidst pressures of rising production quotas and advancing technologies, a batch of test blanks was accidentally funneled into mainstream coin production, leaving behind a class of rogue coins now indistinguishable from the ordinary save for the scars they bear. The errors etched into their surfaces like ancient warnings, errors that no one could explain and no one would officially recognize. These questions spiraled into more radical territory as the first 1996D cents exhibiting severe die clashes began to emerge, coins with unmistakable impressions of Lincoln's bust mirrored into the reverse fields, or faint outlines of the memorial columns bleeding into the obverse portrait, as if the dies themselves had collided without a planchette in place, creating ghost impressions that remained uncorrected, unreported, and undeniably real, challenging everything we thought we knew about the mint's quality control. And as these clash-marked coins circulated alongside those with shadowy doubling and off-center strikes, theories multiplied like fire. Some speculated that 1996 was the site of an unpublicized transition in die design or hub pressure standards, that perhaps new engraving technologies were being tested and failed catastrophically on a select number of dies, before being scrapped and buried beneath layers of bureaucracy. Others posited that a rogue set of dies had been struck by unauthorized personnel, or that a damaged master hub had inadvertently been used to create a chain of flawed working dies, resulting in a cascade of errors that the mint quietly suppressed through coinage destruction but could never fully contain. And amid this whirlwind of speculation, Tantalizing evidence began to emerge from coin roll hunters and estate auctions. Photos of 1996D. Pennies where Lincoln's eye was doubled into a strange almond shape. Coins where the word liberty appeared stretched and slanted as though melting, and in the most chilling examples, coins with no FG initials whatsoever on the reverse, where Frank Gasparo's signature should have been, stripped away either through excessive dye abrasion or through the use of a reverse dye that was never meant for circulation, a detail so critical, so precise, that its absence speaks volumes about a minting process that spiraled briefly out of control and then snapped back into uniformity, leaving behind only a few survivors. A few coins scattered like relics across the American economy, waiting to be found, to be understood, to be believed, and just as the community began to settle into cautious acceptance of these phenomena as isolated anomalies, a new wave of discoveries reopened the mystery. 1996D Lincoln pennies, struck with a ghostly doubling on the reverse steps, an area almost never affected by true die doubling, suggesting the presence of hybrid die states or a misalignment during the hubbing process, or even an experimental die rotation phase meant to correct known, striking flaws that was later abandoned, and yet these coins exist, real and verified, documented and scanned, their features undeniable, and in them we find the beating heart of this enigma, the notion that somewhere, deep in the bowels of the Denver Mint, something went wrong in 1996, something that has never been explained, something that has haunted every collector who has ever held one of these flawed yet compelling pennies and asked, how could this have happened? How could a system so rigid, so exacting, have allowed such ghosts to pass into the world? Were they errors or were they warnings? Were they accidental or were they placed intentionally by a hand unknown, a signal to those who look too closely, who search too deeply, who ask questions no one wants to answer? And so the search continues, more fevered than ever, driven not by greed, not by value, but by a need to know, to uncover the full scope of what the 1996D Lincoln penny truly represents, and whether somewhere in the chaos of industrial silence and unrecorded failures, a truth remains waiting to be uncovered, a truth that might shake the very foundations of modern minting history. Thank you for joining us on this haunting journey through shadows, secrets, and scents here at Numismatics with Alon, where every coin has a past, and some pasts refuse to stay buried. Like, share, and subscribe if the story of the 1996D Lincoln penny moved you, because the deeper you look, the stranger the truth becomes. Next, imagine holding a coin so ordinary in its daily circulation, so easily passed from hand to hand, purse to register, and yet so cloaked in silent mystery that every glance at its coppered surface might hide secrets never meant for public eyes. What if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if that mistake wasn't a simple oversight but a fracture in the foundation of the U.S. Mint itself? A ripple that escaped unnoticed in 2001, a year of political transition and economic uncertainty were hidden within the steel machines of the Denver Mint, a breach in protocol, a moment of mechanical rebellion, or even deliberate intervention gave birth to one of the most mystifying numismatic enigmas in modern American history. The 2001D Lincoln penny, an unassuming cent bearing the D of the Denver Mint, the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln and the iconic Lincoln Memorial reverse, yet surrounded by an aura of unresolvable contradictions, inexplicable die flaws, and forensic curiosities that have driven even the most rational collectors into decades-long spirals of obsession. It began with whispers, scattered reports of coins showing dramatic doubling in places where doubling had no business being, Lincoln's profile appearing twice on the same coin, one image superimposed just slightly over another, giving the face a spectral glow, or the word liberty etched with disturbing echoes, as if the metal had trembled beneath the die, not once but multiple times. And yet none of these variations were formally documented, none were acknowledged by the Mint, creating a paradox that made collectors question the very stability of official records. But these weren't isolated mistrikes, not mere victims of hub doubling or post-mint damage. They appeared with a consistency that suggested a systemic die problem, or worse, an unannounced test series accidentally released into public circulation. And it was in that pattern, in those curious groupings of flawed coins emerging across the Midwest and Southwest, that seasoned collectors began to wonder. Was there a secret minting project underway in Denver in 2001? One never completed, one never meant to leave the facility, whose remnants now exist only in these corrupted cents with no paperwork, no audit trails, just physical evidence that refuses to be ignored. The anomalies deepened, off-center strikes became increasingly reported, some with partial dates, others with full dates but missing the D mint mark entirely, raising the terrifying possibility that Philadelphia and Denver dies were somehow mixed, or that entire batches were struck using unfinished dies not yet ready for production. And stranger still were the cases of coins with missing or partially polished out FG initials, the initials of Frank Gasparo, the man behind the memorial design, missing as though someone had deliberately sanded the design clean before minting, or used a die so overpolished that details vanished into the metal itself, giving rise to coins that felt half real, half erased, as if they were ghosts of designs that barely clung to their own physicality. And with that vanishing came stories from collectors who swore they found pennies with strange weight anomalies, coins that should have weighed 2.5 grams but came in lighter or heavier, prompting metallurgical analyses that suggested contaminated planchettes or foreign metal inserts. And when those reports hit the underground numismatic networks, theories spiraled out of control. Some believed that scrap experimental blanks were accidentally or perhaps intentionally reused, while others were convinced the Denver Mint was the site of an aborted penny redesign that was never made public, its only proof being the coins that refused to conform to any known classification. As more of these 2001D anomalies surfaced, the narrative grew darker. Reports of dramatic die clashes began circulating, coins with visible impressions of Lincoln's head bleeding into the memorial columns, ghost-like overlays that made it appear as though the face of the president was watching from both sides of the coin, from past and future, observer and symbol simultaneously, all while new errors began surfacing that defied known minting processes altogether. Pennies where the words "In God We Trust" appeared stretched or shattered, where "E pluribus unum" was doubled to the point of illegibility, and where devices like the Lincoln Memorial steps dissolved into mushy, indistinct shadows as though cast by failing light or fractured memory. And then came the stories of the misaligned strikes. Not just a few degrees off-center, but violently shifted, as if the planchette had been moving during the strike, resulting in coins with one side sharply misaligned and the other strangely intact, a phenomenon never explained but repeated just enough times to spark rumors of a press malfunction or deliberate sabotage. But perhaps the most chilling pieces were those that bore phantom mint marks, ghostly Ds barely visible, some angled strangely as if carved or punched manually, giving rise to the most whispered theory of all, that rogue mint workers, angry or ideologically motivated, had modified working dies in secret, leaving behind a trail of unapproved marks and quietly chaotic variations as an act of rebellion or protest, a theory supported only by the eerie consistency of these abnormalities appearing in clusters across specific regions of the country, and the utter silence from the mint in response to multiple documented submissions for clarification. But collectors kept digging, connecting dots between known experimental coinage patterns from the late 90s and early 2000s, uncovering confidential reports that hinted at rejected redesigns and die-hubbing experiments, including one particularly sensitive memo that referenced unauthorized die state progression in D-Press facility, April-May 2001, and though no official document has ever confirmed that such a progression led to public release, the timing, the location, and the physical evidence all align like gears in a broken watch, ticking toward a truth no one has the authority to reveal. And so the legend of the 2001D Lincoln penny grows, each strange coin a breadcrumb in a dark forest of unanswered questions, each misaligned mint mark, ghosted device, or missing initial, a heartbeat echoing from within the hollow vaults of a government facility that may have, for one moment in 2001, lost control of its own machinery. And yet perhaps the greatest mystery is not how these coins came to be, but why so many of them seem to find their way into the hands of those who pay attention, as if drawn to those who can see beyond the copper surface, who feel the pull of history trying to tell its own story through scars and silences. And what does it mean when a coin resists identification? When its features resist standard classification? When even the greatest experts disagree on its origins? Is it simply error, or something deeper, the fingerprint of change, the mark of instability within the mechanical perfection we so desperately want to trust? And if such coins exist in 2001D, could there be more? Undiscovered, hiding in drawers, stuck in vending machines, lying unrecognized in penny jars on forgotten bookshelves, just waiting for the one person whose eyes have been opened by these very stories to recognize the invisible. This is the essence of the 2001D Lincoln Penny mystery, a saga that blends the mechanical with the mythical, the historical with the impossible, a trail of clues scattered across the nation for those daring enough to follow. And if you're still watching, still listening, still feeling the weight of this journey echo in your hands the next time you hold a coin, then you are part of the story now. A seeker in the silent treasure hunt of American numismatics. This has been another deep descent into mystery with Numismatics with Elan, where the past speaks not through words but through metal, and some stories refuse to stay buried. Like, share, and subscribe if the mystery of the 2001D Lincoln Penny has awakened something in you. Because the search never ends, and the next twist may lie just beneath your fingertips. Next, imagine a coin that slips through your fingers like any other. A penny so common in appearance it should have been forgotten like the millions of others minted that year. And yet, what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if that tiny imperfection was not just a minting fluke, but a crack in the facade of an entire system meant to ensure precision? A shadow cast across the Denver Mint in 1980 during a time of silent unrest and hidden change? As the United States approached the dawn of a new economic chapter, riddled with inflation, Cold War tensions, and shifting government priorities, a peculiar anomaly began to circulate through the veins of American commerce and ordinary 1980D. Lincoln Penny harboring secrets no one at first dared to acknowledge. Secrets that would over time ignite a wildfire of obsession among numismatists and historians alike, spiraling into an underground legend whispered about at coin shows and passed along in hushed tones between collectors. Because this was no ordinary scent. This was a cipher, a mechanical mystery, and a portal into something forgotten by time but never erased. It started, as all great mysteries do, with a question: how could a coin so small carry so many impossible features? Early reports spoke of double dates, with the numbers 1980 appearing thickened and shadowed, not once but layered like echoes frozen in metal, while the mint mark itself shifted strangely in location and angle, some examples appearing misbunched or off-axis, leading seasoned collectors to ask, was this the result of a misaligned die, a mechanical breakdown, or something far more complex, an experimental punch phase the mint never intended to go public? Then came the revelations of off-center strikes, not minor, accidental skews but deliberate seeming distortions that left Lincoln's face stretching toward the rim like a ghost trying to escape its copper prison, and reverse sides where the Lincoln Memorial seemed to melt into its own architecture, columns fused and lettering doubled with E pluribus unum, appearing disfigured, distorted, even fractured as if struck while the guy was in motion or partially jammed, an occurrence that should have triggered immediate removal from circulation. And yet these coins kept appearing, piece by piece, suggesting either a systemic oversight or an internal error someone within the mint wanted to keep quiet. And just as the numismatic world began scratching its collective head, further anomalies emerged, coins missing the designer's initials, FG, altogether, as if the master die had been overpolished to such an extent that its very identity was wiped from existence, or worse. as if someone had intentionally removed them in a series of rogue die adjustments whose motivations remain lost to history. These missing initials weren't just cosmetic errors, they were the fingerprints of sabotage or secrecy, each one suggesting a deeper story, a production narrative that couldn't be explained by wear and tear alone, especially when collectors discovered transitional pieces coins struck on older alloy planchettes or with subtly different weights, pieces that defied composition standards and hinted at leftover stock or unauthorized experimentation, causing experts to wonder whether the Denver Mint had quietly transitioned production methods behind the scenes and whether the 1980D Lincoln penny was the unintentional artifact of that switch. As more examples appeared, a pattern emerged. Many of the flawed pennies were traced back to Western states, found in circulation years after the official mintage, which only fueled suspicions that certain batches of anomalous coins had been released quietly and selectively, possibly as part of a covert testing phase or emergency output intended to compensate for a production shortfall, with non-standard planchettes or damaged dies used in desperation to keep minting on schedule. This theory was further supported by eyewitness accounts from former Mint employees, one of whom anonymously reported in the early 90s that several die sets intended for destruction in late 1979 were instead accidentally reinstalled during a chaotic shift change, an internal lapse never officially documented but whispered about among senior staff, lending weight to the belief that some 1980D pennies were struck using improperly retired or refurbished dies, leading to die clash marks so intense they left permanent shadows of reverse features on the obverse and vice versa. Some of these coins showed eerie impressions of the Lincoln memorial bleeding through onto Lincoln's face, with his profile appearing half-sketched or chiseled, as if haunted by its own reverse side, and such examples were dismissed by skeptics as isolated damage until a pattern of consistency emerged, with similar specimens appearing in different states, minted months apart, but showing the exact same clash alignment and impossibility unless they shared a die lineage, a production ghost that should have been caught in inspection but wasn't, possibly because the error wasn't visible until the coins had already been bagged, sealed, and shipped. Then came the revelation that some 1980D Lincoln pennies bore impressions from misaligned collar strikes, resulting in irregular edge ridges and reading-like distortions never officially authorized for Lincoln cents, prompting some experts to speculate that a mechanical malfunction had caused the collar mechanism from another coin series to be improperly attached to the penny press, an error only detectable if you knew what to look for, and one that by sheer oversight or calculated concealment escaped record-keeping altogether. And just when it seemed the mystery could deepen no further, a batch of coins emerged bearing signs of partial brockage reverse fields flattened, central devices duplicated in mirror image impressions, leading to the hypothesis that improperly ejected coins had remained in the press chamber, struck again by a descending die, creating the ghostly echo of another coin overlaid on the surface of a newer strike. These errors weren't just minting accidents, they were visual riddles, layers of numismatic history encoded into metal and misunderstood by all but the most determined collectors. And their persistence in circulation begged the question, how many of these coins still lie hidden in plain sight? How many rest, unrecognized, in change jars, vending machines, pocketbooks, or coin-counting machines, just waiting to be discovered by someone trained to spot the phantom of a missing initial, the shimmer of a misaligned D, or the warp of a doubled motto? As the decades passed and more of these unusual pieces surfaced, interest in the 1980D Lincoln penny shifted from casual curiosity to full-blown fixation forums erupted in debate. Expert panels failed to agree on classification standards, and coin grading services reported conflicting diagnostics, with identical coins receiving wildly different assessments, as if the anomaly refused to be captured, resisting definition like a living thing. Numismatic historians began to propose wilder theories that these coins were remnants of a lost transitional die set prepared for a never-released bicentennial redesign, or that the anomalies were part of a classified quality control experiment, designed to study how much visual error the public would tolerate before noticing, a test in psychological tolerance dressed in copper and zinc. Others pointed to government memos from the late 1970s referencing emergency dye retention protocols during periods of heightened Cold War paranoia, raising the unsettling idea that coins could be weaponized as traceable markers in an era of espionage and economic subterfuge, with certain dye codes used to trace coin movement patterns across regions. Whether or not such theories hold water, the fact remains: the 1980D Lincoln penny exists in forms and variations that defy both mint documentation and modern explanation. Its surface is engraved not just with the face of Lincoln, but with a deeper message encoded in doubling, clash marks, ghost strikes, and absent initials, each one a clue to a larger mystery that continues to evade final understanding. And in that absence of closure lies its greatest power, for it is not just a coin, it is a question, a trigger for the imagination, a vessel for speculation that binds together history, obsession, and the eternal allure of the unsolved. So, if you've ever held a 1980D penny and wondered whether it was just another cent, ask yourself again, what if that tiny imperfection, that offbeat shine or shadowed lettering, was the fingerprint of an era so rare, so deeply buried in the machinery of history, that you might be the first to recognize it for what it truly is, a whisper from the past, calling to you across the decades to look closer, dig deeper, and never stop searching. Thank you for diving headfirst into another thrilling mystery with Numismatics with Elon, where every coin has a secret, every flaw holds a story, and the truth is waiting just beneath the surface. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe the 1980D Lincoln penny still holds secrets yet to be found, because this journey is far from over and the next clue might already be in your pocket. Next, what if a tiny, nearly imperceptible error transformed an ordinary copper-plated zinc disc into one of the rarest, most enigmatic relics of American coinage history? What if a single 2000 Lincoln penny, born from the Denver Mint in the dawn of a new millennium, holds within its small copper shell an entire universe of secrets, mishaps, and mysteries so profound that it continues to haunt collectors, historians, and government archivists alike? What if this unassuming cent carries with it the invisible fingerprint of a forgotten era, where the shifting machinery of the U.S. Mint was caught in a moment of chaotic transition, overlooked protocol, and silent rebellion? What if this coin, like a whisper in a hurricane, escaped the grinding teeth of quality control, slipped through the narrow cracks of bureaucracy, and now circulates as a ghost among us, hiding in plain sight yet holding the power to unravel hidden chapters of the Mint's troubled history? What if the 2000D Lincoln penny, often disregarded at first glance, is actually a key to unlocking the most curious and confounding dye anomalies, planchette inconsistencies, and unexplained mintmark behaviors ever recorded in modern numismatics? A coin so deeply buried in mystery that even seasoned experts find themselves spiraling into obsessive investigation the moment they examine one up close, drawn to subtle cues, the ever so slight doubling on the obverse that blurs Lincoln's profile into a ghost-like echo, the faint clash marks that suggest a phantom reverse image pressed against the wrong die, the odd indentations that seem too deliberate to be accidental yet too bizarre to be officially acknowledged, the occasional absence of the designer's initials altogether, as though the coin itself were attempting to erase its own identity. Stories pour in from coin dealers and amateur collectors who have encountered strange 2000D specimens showing signs of reverse die misalignments, uneven rim pressure, and eerie shadowed features behind Lincoln's ear, all while the Mint's own records remain disturbingly silent, as if scrubbed of any acknowledgement, as if someone somewhere didn't want these details preserved. Some theories speak of a lost experimental dye trial carried out in secret during a rushed production cycle in late 1999 as Y2K paranoia loomed, when human error, machine fatigue, and political pressure collided to birth a handful of irregular coins that were never meant to enter public circulation. Yet somehow they did. Others suggest the retooling of old Denver dies intended for a defunct special strike set, hastily repurposed, leading to an anomalous hybrid of design intentions that left behind trace elements of obsolete motifs barely detectable under magnification. Whispers of devices no longer sanction certain 2000 descents even exhibit telltale indicators of broad-strike errors, missing collar constrictions or off-center impressions so slight they escape the untrained eye, and yet these clues, when combined, paint a portrait of an operation barely under control, of a mint pushed to the limits, producing billions yet letting slip the occasional aberration that would go unnoticed until now. What makes this coin so unnerving is not just its physical oddities but the emotional undercurrent it stirs in those who encounter it, a feeling of uncovering something not just rare but forbidden, a sensation echoed in hushed online forums where collectors share images of off-color toning, unusually textured surfaces, or misaligned lettering that doesn't appear in any official database. A sense that some of these coins were struck from dies that were supposed to be decommissioned, or that perhaps a rogue press operator, either knowingly or unknowingly, allowed a misconfigured setup to run far longer than protocol would allow. Some specimens displayed doubling on both averse and reverse, raising the impossible scenario of dual die errors converging on the same planchet, a statistical nightmare that suggests the improbable was not only possible in 2000, but perhaps systemic. Then there are the coins reported with signs of excessive die polishing, wiping away major features until Lincoln's body appears almost melted, and the motto, "In God We Trust," appears to shimmer as if reluctant to exist at all. Were these over-polished dies reused improperly? Were they part of a forgotten test run? Eyewitness accounts from former mint contractors have surfaced in recent years, speaking anonymously of unusually high reject rates during that fiscal quarter, of pallets of coins flagged for reprocessing, of trays filled with cents that bore unmistakable abnormalities, but were cleared to circulate anyway due to pressure to meet quotas. The shadows lengthened further with whispers of a confidential memo passed between mint superintendents describing unaccounted die behavior during Lincoln cent production, and yet no formal record of such a memo can be found in FOIA archives, leaving behind a legend of bureaucratic erasure, a cover-up as subtle and calculated as the coin itself. Then come the stories from the collectors who obsess over the 2000D penny, some of whom have devoted decades of their lives to studying this single issue, amassing hundreds of examples, mapping each anomaly as if charting an unknown star system, tracking tiny differences in die wear, strike pressure, and edge anomalies with the fervor of religious scholars deciphering lost scriptures. There is one report, still hotly debated, of a 2000D specimen showing what appears to be a rotated reverse of almost 90 degrees, yet bearing no signs of tampering. How does such a glaring error make it past every safeguard unless the safeguards were never truly watching? And what of the handful of coins that show odd plating bubbles or strange discoloration patterns inconsistent with normal environmental wear, suggesting chemical contamination or miscalculated composition ratios during the blanking process? Could a malfunction in alloy mixing have occurred during a shift change? Or perhaps recycled planchettes with residual contaminant layers were accidentally used? If so, why does the mint deny this possibility? Every question only multiplies into more riddles, and every new discovery adds layers of complexity to a coin that refuses to yield its truth, a coin that seems alive with secrets. The very nature of the 2000D penny invites scrutiny, but recoils from definitive answers, each microscopic inconsistency acting like a breadcrumb leading to a deeper mystery, a rabbit hole that numismatists continue to descend with ever-widening eyes. Each story, whether of a misaligned die, a hidden doubling, or an unexplained missing mint mark, contributes to a mythology that has elevated this coin from forgotten change to legendary artifact, a copper-clad cipher that mocks our assumptions of order and precision in modern minting. Why are some specimens curiously underweight by a margin too small to trigger alarm but too large to ignore? Was there a batch of under-annealed planchettes? Or was something else at play? Something not intended for the public eye? Accounts from European collectors describe finding 2000D cents in circulation overseas, sparking theories that error batches may have been quietly exported to reduce scrutiny. Meanwhile, specialized scanning electron microscope analysis conducted by independent labs have revealed inconsistencies in grain structure, between certain error coins and their standard counterparts, deepening suspicions that not all 2000 cents were created equally. Some even postulate the existence of multiple undocumented subvarieties, each carrying a unique fingerprint of production chaos. Could there be a master set of misstruck pennies from that year waiting to be uncovered? And if so, what would their collective pattern reveal about the U.S. Mint's operations at the turn of the millennium? It is not merely the coin's anomalies that captivate us, but the eerie synchronicity of how all these flaws, all these oddities, seem to converge in one year. At one mint, on one denomination, it is as though the 2000 penny was destined to be the epicenter of 1,000 small catastrophes, each too small to matter on its own, but together forming a mosaic of haunting beauty and bureaucratic mystery. No single coin encapsulates the unpredictability of the minting process, the fallibility of machines and men, and the obsessive desire of collectors more than this copper-coated enigma. This anomaly from Denver that defies explanation yet demands devotion, a coin that should have been ordinary, but became extraordinary, not because of its value, but because of its story, its scars, and the secrets it carries in silence. So, if you ever find yourself holding a 2000 Lincoln penny and feel a chill in your spine, look closer, because what you hold might not just be a coin, it might be a question that no one has yet answered, a puzzle still unsolved, a whisper from the machinery of history reminding us that even in the smallest things, the greatest mysteries can be found. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of the most perplexing coins ever struck by the United States Mint. If this story stirred something inside you, if you now see the humble penny with new eyes, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share this journey with fellow seekers of truth. For here at Numismatics with Alon, every coin has a soul, and every mystery deserves to be told.